Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live on the POSTCAST following the Timberwolves loss to the Milwaukee Bucks on Friday night. Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North joins the show to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North is with us to break down the Timberwolves loss to the Bucks. And Marney, the trend kind of continued in this one. The Wolves played hard. They had some good moments. They led for a long time against a really good team by as many as 13 points in this game, by 11 at halftime. But ultimately, Giannis Antentokounmpo and the Bucks were too much, especially, for stretches of the third and fourth quarter. It was just too much for the Wolves.
Too much Giannis, too much rebounding in general, too many offensive rebounds for the Bucks, and not having Rudy Gobert tonight for the Wolves probably really hurt in that area. But I sometimes looked at the individual numbers and then at the final score and thought, how are the Wolves still in this game? And they were very much in it down the stretch, and it ended up a 9-point game, but the Wolves had an opportunity at a 3 when they were down like 5 with a minute and a half left or something like that. It was, they had a no give up, no quit in them tonight. I realize that does not go into the win column at all. It doesn't count in the standings, but it's better than just folding and throwing your arms up in the air and laying down and pouting.
As long as we've seen the Wolves do that this year, right? Now it's been a few weeks. I think for the most part, they've been more competitive lately. Yes. Like you mentioned, the rebounding, we could start and stop really with the 28 turnovers by Minnesota and the 20 offensive rebounds for the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee almost doubled up Minnesota on the glass, 38-36 in total rebounds in this game, 20 offensive rebounds for Milwaukee. The Wolves only had one player with more than 7 rebounds, and that was Anthony Edwards. They obviously know Rudy Gobert, of course, still know Karl Anthony Towns. You get Kyle Anderson back, but Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels are your starting 3 and 4, and they combined for 3 rebounds. Nobody on the bench had more than 4 rebounds in this game. And you could point the finger at really anybody except for Ant when it comes to rebounding. I thought as a team, they just collectively did not rebound well. Oftentimes it's easy to say the guards and wings didn't rebound their position, but I think the bigs, for the most part, struggled on the glass, too. And Milwaukee's obviously a really good rebounding team. And I talked about this on Friday's Locked On Wolves episode that, hey, they're a good offensive rebounding team. You better bring your lunch pail if you're going to, keep Giannis and Bobby Portis off the glass. And unfortunately, that was a huge part of what Milwaukee did to overcome the Wolves in the third quarter and ultimately build a bit of a lead themselves.
Yeah, D'Angelo Russell had 5 rebounds.
Yeah.
Jalen Noel had 4 rebounds. So that's the backcourt, which a lot of times when you have a really bad rebounding game, you look at the guards and go, geez, you guys got to contribute a little bit here. But that wasn't the case at all. Luka Garza, actually, who had a decent game, 16 points off the bench. But in his post-game press conference, he was looking at the numbers and he was like, I played 16 or 18 minutes and I only had 1 defensive rebound and I have to be better in that area. So, it's little things like that. It's each guy kind of hanging on to his own and knowing the situation and knowing Rudy Gobert is not here and he's still the second leading rebounder in the NBA. So how are you going to make that up? And who's going to get those rebounds? And in this case, nobody, apparently, because Milwaukee missed a lot of shots, especially in the first half.
Yep.
The Bucks were 3 for 22 from 3 in the first half. There were a lot of rebounds to be had. That's the other thing, too, is that you knew that wasn't going to continue. Milwaukee's not a 14% three-point shooting team. So in the second half, then they go 11 of 17. And again, I look at that statistic and I say, how are the Wolves in this game to the end when the Bucks went 11 of 17 from 3 in the second half? And it was the momentum swing in the third quarter when the Bucks just started to really take control of this game. That's when I thought this could easily be a 25-point Wolves loss. And to Minnesota's credit, it was not.
Yeah, the Bucks had 24 second chance points by the end of the third quarter, and at that point they had built a multi-possession lead, and I think they only had a couple offensive boards in the fourth. But I mean, part of the reason there were so many offensive boards available to be had was how badly they shot from deep in the first half. And of course, long rebounds, anything can happen with those. But it was a lot of Bobby Portis, a lot of Giannis. And you mentioned Luka Garza. I thought he played well overall too. But then you look at the box score and it's like, oh man, he was battling down low, but he ultimately wasn't getting these rebounds. I thought Nate Knight only played 5 minutes. He played in that, I think it was early second quarter, late first quarter, maybe. After Nas first went out with a little bit of foul trouble. And so it was a Nate Knight, Luka Garza front court. And I thought they played pretty well together. Now, Knight didn't register a rebound himself in 5 minutes, but generally speaking, he's a pretty good rebound rate guy. And I thought it would have been interesting to see him get some of those Garza minutes in the second half. But, overall, Garza played well. It was rebounding and toughness. I think in the paint, Nate Knight might have given you a little bit more of that. I think the 24 second chance points by the end of the third quarter, the 11 of 17 in the second half. In the first half, I thought Minnesota did a pretty good job contesting Milwaukee's 3-point attempts, and that was part of the reason they were 3 for 22 or whatever it was in the first half. I actually thought the Wolves competed defensively. They scrambled well. They contested shots. The Bucks missed, a few open ones too, and that's what flipped in the second half. And I think the Wolves were just a little bit slower in the second half, getting out there to contest threes. But early on, I thought the Wolves were a pretty big part. It wasn't just Milwaukee missing. I thought the Wolves defense competed really well in the first half.
They did. They had some jump with them tonight. The defense, when you get to the end of a road trip, and this was a full week, 4 games, but over the holidays, and it felt long. If I think back to this road trip starting in Boston before Christmas, that just feels like a long time. And we were here. We didn't go on the road trip. So I can imagine if you're those players, you put on those miles and you're looking at the front end of a back-to-back, the contest and the energy that it takes to play good, solid defense, you might think that would slip a little bit at this point on game 4 of a 4-game road trip. But I'll have to agree with you, Ben. There were some good contests. There was some good jump from the Wolves defense, but Milwaukee at home by a winning percentage is the second best winning percentage. I think 14-3 going in, so now 15-3 at home. That it's just a different team. They roll on a different level. They get that crowd behind them, and they're really hard to stop. So the Wolves needed to bring that defense and more, unfortunately, tonight in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and Milwaukee had lost 4 in a row coming into the game like the Wolves, so they were definitely ready to try and get right. Let's talk about our title sponsors of the show tonight of the postcast. That's our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season, which we're in the middle of now, plus college basketball and, of course, pro basketball. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline too. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We have to talk about Giannis. He had a second consecutive 40-20 game. He finished with 43-20, was 14-21 at the line. 5 assists, a couple of blocks. He had the Bucks actually as a team had 21 turnovers. He had 5 turnovers, a couple of real sloppy passes from Giannis, but he was fantastic in this game overall. And again, I thought in the first half, Kyle Anderson came out primarily guarding Giannis. The Wolves did switch McDaniels onto him a little bit. They were happy to do that. And then Jaden picked up 2 early fouls. One of them was a pretty cheap foul and was on the bench. And then it was all Kyle Anderson. And then it just was in the third quarter, it seemed to come in waves with Giannis. He had that brief moment in the second quarter where he got frustrated after getting called for hooking Anthony Edwards on the offensive foul, got a technical. Budenholzer got a technical. But then in the second half, it was like Giannis just became like the Giannis that we all expected him to be, and just kind of steamrolled the Timberwolves throughout the second half.
And it was the second game in a row where the Wolves dealt with just a physical monster of a player, because Zion Williamson in New Orleans on Wednesday played that kind of a game where he just took everything over. He was the individual player that just ruled the court like Giannis did tonight. Even in the final, maybe 30 seconds left, and the Bucks were kind of dribbling it out. They needed to take a shot still, but they were kind of passing around the perimeter, and somebody got the ball to Giannis, and all of a sudden he just drives into the lane and gets fouled. And it was like, geez, I thought you were running out the clock here. And he didn't have a quit button. He didn't have the stop button, even in the final 20, 30 seconds of the game. That was just the kind of mode that Giannis was in tonight. He's on some kind of a bender. It's been incredible.
Yeah, and on the Wolves side, Anthony Edwards, I thought played a pretty good overall game in a game where the Wolves themselves, what did Ant have, 30 and 10? Yeah, so nobody else had more than 7 rebounds for the Wolves. Nobody else had more than 16 points for the Wolves. Ant shot 10 of 20 from the field, 2 of 6 outside the arc, 8 of 14 at the line. He struggled again with his shot at the free throw line. I think he missed his first 3 or 4 from there. And then, of course, hit the 2 after he took that hard foul and laid on the floor for a while at the end of the mid-late fourth quarter. But overall, he had 4 steals, a couple of blocks. Like, this was a really solid all-around Ant game, and it's just too bad that he didn't get much help from his teammates in this game offensively and defensively. We already talked about Giannis. What do you do about that, right? It wasn't completely up to Ant to stop Giannis, but a good offensive game from Ant, and we've seen him continue to play better here of late.
Yeah, I think this is 7 straight now of scoring at least 20 points, and the efficiency has just been up so much more, especially since Karl-Anthony Towns went down with the injury right around Thanksgiving. And that, to me, has been the part that has stood out to me about Anthony Edwards, because there were too many pull-up 3-point shots. There was too much just kind of launching from 3, and now there's such a nice balance, and he has such a determination to get to the rim, and he did that again tonight. You mentioned the 5 minutes or so that he spent on the baseline and then on the sideline trying to walk off whatever happened when he landed on his left hip, it looked like. He's physical, he's determined. It's a different kind of Ant, where he has this mindset of taking on defenders. Even after he was hurt, he ended up staying in the game. Of course, Milwaukee fans booed him for that. He stayed in the game, and then he kept driving. Like, he wasn't done taking physical contact, even though he could barely get up off the floor after landing on his tailbone or on his left cheek, it looked like. I don't know if he's going to play tomorrow. That thing could really tighten up. The flight home, late arrival. It'll be interesting to see what Anthony Edwards' status is for the game tomorrow night against Detroit.
Yeah, the Wolves take on the Pistons Saturday night. Detroit still has the worst record in the league. They're 9-29. They've been playing a little bit better of late. They took the Clippers to overtime. They lost Friday night tonight to the Bulls, but had won the game right before that. But they're also a little bit shorthanded. Of course, Cade Cunningham is out. They've had guys out, a couple suspensions or a few suspensions from that incident with Orlando the other night. And other injuries and illnesses and things like that. I think Marvin Bagley missed, or no, I guess he played tonight, but he had missed a game due to illness. So the Pistons are they're not a good team. It's a game the Wolves should absolutely win, even frankly with or without Anthony Edwards. But I mean, they can be a good offensive team. They can score in bunches, and the Wolves will need to be on their game Saturday. Who knows about Rudy on Saturday as well. So it's not going to be. It seems really silly to call a game right now in late December a must win, but it really feels like an important game for the Wolves to win on Saturday.
I completely agree with that, and it's one of those teams that you have to be prepared for and be ready, because when you got a young team like that, they're rolling out some rookies that don't know any better. They don't know that they're supposed to be tired, or that this on paper, look at this matchup. They hooping, they're getting their chance in the NBA. They're still energetic. And sometimes those are the games that a couple of those guys get hot, and it's like, dang, look out. And they're coming off a back-to-back too. They played in Chicago and lost that game. So both teams are traveling. Both teams are playing 2 games in 24 hours apart. So the slate is even there. Both teams are coming in with a lot of guys not available. We don't know about Rudy Gobert for tomorrow. We don't know about Anthony Edwards for tomorrow. But we do know that you cannot just show up to Target Center and think, this is a W because it's the Pistons and they have the worst record in the East, and let's just lock it in. You got to be ready. You got to pay attention to detail. You got to play a pretty clean game and be prepared. And let's hope 2022 ends with a Wolves win, because they need it after this road trip. They need to start turning things in the right direction.
Yeah, 5-game losing streak that has to come to an end, and hopefully that happens Saturday against the Pistons. Of course, we'll go live about 45 minutes or so following the game. We do that on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube page after every Wolves game, and then you can also listen to the audio from the live postcast on the Locked On Wolves audio feeds wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe to both Locked On Sports Minnesota and Locked On Wolves wherever you do listen to podcasts. A big thank you for watching. A big thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.